All right, so I'm going to record the Zoom call just in case, too. All right, so welcome to the Be Yourself, Do It Yourself podcast, episode number, I think this is like 7 or 8. And I have Fernando Garcia with me today from The Fox and King. So thanks for being here,
What's
man.
going on? Thanks for having me, man. This is great.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate you willing to do it so quickly. I know I hit you up like 2 days ago. And I was like, do you have any time to sit and have a Zoom call for an hour? So yeah, thanks for being so cool about that. So you and I guess our connection is through music and through local events and whatnot. For anyone who doesn't know what the Fox and King is, the Fox and King is a promotion and booking agency kind of company that puts on shows in mostly the Bronx, but also sometimes in Westchester and I think even Brooklyn, right?
Yeah, Brooklyn. Early on in our days, we had a couple shows in Manhattan. Lower East Side, Orleans, pianos. But in the past couple of years, we just wanted to help revitalize the local Bronx scene. That's our hood, that's our stomping ground, and we said, you know what, let's bring it back home.
Yeah, respect to that. I mean, it's awesome to see shows at FLC again because that's where I grew up going to shows.
Dude.
So that's like it's like amazing to see that's back. But let's so you and I like I kind of said before we hopped on was we know each other, we're acquaintances, and we've had conversations, but we never had I don't think we ever had like a long conversation. So I'd love to get to know you a little bit better through this, and I would love to like kind of hear out your story and like what where you kind of came from and how it all happened for you, like what got you to the point you're at now.
Oh, definitely.
So I would love to, I guess, start a little bit from the back all the way in the beginning. Like, as a kid,
Yeah.
you grew up in the Bronx.
Yeah, I grew up in the Bronx, born and raised. I grew up around Castle Hill,
Okay.
then moved over to Broads Neck later on. Went to school in the Bronx. All my family's from here. And, again, like you, I grew up going to FLC, Bronx Underground, and, at like 12, 13, going to these basement shows every other Friday. I'm like, what the hell is this? This is new to me. This is crazy. And, I kind of fell in love with the whole scene. It was my first introduction to local concerts, to local music, to people like me. It was a community,
Yeah.
and that really inspired me going forward. I did my thing. I was in a couple bands in high school, here and there. Mostly, your MCR, your cover bands, your blank,
What did
that
you
kind of shit.
What did you play?
I play guitar.
Cool. I didn't even know you played guitar. I had no idea.
Yeah, I have my Fender Strat in a corner of my room. I haven't touched it in years, but I keep it. It's I love that thing.
That's awesome.
But yeah, so I didn't really work in music until college. I was in my sophomore year. I'm trying to figure out what the hell am I going to do with my life. I'm trying to look at my credits and my classes and all that. And I say, you know what? I love music. I want to get a career in music one day. I'll do it after college. I'll get an internship. I'll get a job. And then I thought about it. I'm like, it's what? It's around late 2010. I'm 18 at the time. I say, you know what? Why am I going to wait? Why wait?
Yeah.
I'll do it now. I have friends that are musicians. I have people that love music in the community. And I did my first show at Scott Place Cafe in Throgs Neck, and it was actually their grand opening. So it was a brand new cafe. I was in there studying, and the owners were these dope like Woodstock dudes. Like they knew like all the classic rock. Like that was their jive, and we kind of connected. And I'm like, listen, I want to get into live music production. You guys have a cafe that you want to get the word out. Let me be your events manager.
Hmm.
And that was my first show.
That's awesome. So you were in college at the time.
Yeah, I was currently at Pace, and I was around late 2010, and I was about 18 at the time. I
What
figured,
What were you studying in college?
oddly enough, my first major was psychology.
Oh, cool, cool.
Psychology, and then I switched it over to communications and business management.
Oh, nice. Okay,
After,
cool. I didn't know if there was like
yeah,
a music connection within but communications is pretty like open to a lot of the stuff that you do. I could tell. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So we're the same age then, I think. Are you born in '93?
92.
Oh, 92.
I was
Okay,
born in
there you go. All right, so you're a year older than me. Cool, nice. So all right. So in college, you started throwing shows. Do you remember who was on the first show that you booked? Any band names or
Oh,
anybody?
yeah. So, so at the time, right? I had never met. I'm sure you know the Drew Torres trio. Drew Torres, amazing Bronx artist and musician.
Mhm.
They actually just put out a brand new record. I want to say like a week and a half ago,
Mm.
2 weeks. Amazing. Check it out. Fantastic album. So at the time, I knew of Drew Torres, seeing him at FLC, and other circles. And I was like, okay, my first show, I have to get this guy on. Never met him before, never spoke to him. Emailed him, said, listen, I'm putting this together. My name is Fernando. I'd love for you to be the headliner. Let me tell you, when he said yes, I lost. I was doing jumping, I was doing flips. It was amazing. Um, I had, I think, One for Tomorrow, which is actually Brian Durier's old band. He goes by Durier now. Another amazing Bronx R&B soul performer. Had them on. I think I had Brian Keith as well. But yeah, it was a great show, and everyone was very supportive of it. Because at that point there wasn't really any shows for, I want to say, 2 years. Any like major local shows in this area, and everyone loved it. The support was real, and we just kind of kept on from there. And after a couple of shows at Scott Place, we moved on. We felt ballsy, so we went straight into Brooklyn, and that was an adventure, in and of
Yeah,
itself.
yeah.
That
It's like
was my
the
first
like
time.
gatekeeping of it. You mean? It's like
Yeah,
there's like kind of like a gatekeepy vibe of like, yo, if you're not like a Brooklyn promoter, like,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I'm like, you know
I can
what?
see
Let,
that.
let me let me expand. Let me see how far I can take this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and this is actually a great story. And I say it to anyone who asks me about my experience, or how I began everything. Right. My first show in Brooklyn was the worst show I had ever had.
Yeah, we all
Um,
have them.
yeah, we all have them.
Yeah.
Of course, I was new. I was like, okay, let me get a 3 p.m. slot under the J line in Brooklyn, right, at a bar. Nobody came. It was just the bands. And it's funny enough, the bartender almost actually kicked us out because there was nobody drinking. There was nothing going on. But what I like about this story is that the way I handled everything, I guess, impressed the bartender, which I didn't know at the time, had her own label and management company. So she was like, "Props to you. I want to hire you as my intern," and things just kicked off from there.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so it's like it's one of those lessons where even in the face of utter chaos, like hold fast, do what you got to do, and just make sure everyone's good. Like
Yeah.
control the situation, and anything could happen.
So it's funny. I had a similar conversation like this on the first episode that I did with Mike Terry of
Mm,
Jukebox Romantics, and we talked about and what I'm saying is that it reminds me because we talked about I think it was one of the first jukebox shows, or it was like a very early on jukebox show, and he was telling me how the show was such an utter disaster because the PA system blew up and they didn't have a PA, and they just kept playing and like kept the show rolling without the PA. But it was that time of like this utter thing, like this shit that just was like went so wrong that he was like, yeah, but then that night we got like picked up by the label we were on that ended up getting us to Warp Tour, which and it's like, I think it's something people don't realize that like it's it's always gonna there's always gonna be times where things go very wrong. It's just
yeah,
a matter how level headed you can stay when shit's hitting the fan that can really like help you. And I think it's those people
exactly.
that end up pushing on to do things.
Exactly. That's really what it's all about. You have that mindset. We say, I can do this no matter what. Whatever happens, I'm doing it. It's getting
Mm-hmm.
done. And as you said, that's how you push forward. You
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. And I mean, so when you started the Fox and King,
know?
was it just you at the time, or were you with the other peeps that you're working with now, or?
So it was I started it. I had the idea about it, and then I brought on Brian Durier, and he helped with getting bands together. He helped with a couple shows that we did in Brooklyn, Manhattan. And then over time, I just kind of took the reins forward a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And oddly enough, I didn't meet Chris. Chris Vasquez is our, co-owner now. I didn't meet him until I want to say about 5, 6 years ago.
Okay.
And oddly enough, I met him. I had booked a show at Arlene's Grocery. It was this great hip hop duo all year summer. It was Shinobi Ninja and a couple other cats. And Chris was actually running the PR for all year summer.
Okay.
So that's how we met and connected. And, he worked with me for a little bit. And then we brought him on fully.
That's awesome.
But yeah, we've had a couple, people in and out, but keeping the reins still, going forward. Chris is actually, he's a blessing. You know him. You guys are homies, but
super.
He's awesome.
Yeah. That's all right. So that's really cool. So I've never totally understood this, and I guess that this is something you'll be able to explain to me. So the Underground and Fox and King are two separate things that work together, correct?
Yeah. So how that worked out in 2018? Well, yeah, early 2018. We actually got contacted by Mike Barrios, who is a huge supporter and also the bassist for Drew Torres.
Mm-hmm.
And like, listen, because he had the most connection with FLC, with the church and the council there. He was like, listen, want to bring back shows and I want you to run it. And I was like, oh, you're kidding me. You're kidding me. I was like, okay, give me a week. Let me think about it because I'm not going to say yes unless I know I could do a good job at running this thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, I said yes. I brought in staff. We brought in people. I got the red staff shirts, and but yeah. So the Fox and King kind of like runs the Underground. It's basically a subsidiary, and I call it our all ages wing.
Okay, I understand. Okay.
Yeah. So obviously you wouldn't have it at Barry Electric or Mercury Lounge or anything like that. But TVAC can still have its 21 and up shows.
That's cool. I mean, it's super reminiscent of just like the old days. And by the old days, I mean, early to mid 2000s when it was the Bronx Underground, that was the thing, dude. Like that was the thing that every person our age and older really looked up to. I think we were probably in the younger category of the kids at Bronx Underground shows, like 12, 13, 14, whatever. Exactly. So that's cool that it's like kind of connected to that.
And it's funny, in the past year, I learned that because again, I started going to BXCG like 12, 13, but I found out shortly after the Underground started and we started connecting with more people that there was an entire scene pre Bronx Underground. Like Lucas Pizzeria and other spots with bands like the Kesners, and I was like, obviously that's before my time, but I was still like shocked, like wow, like people were still doing stuff here, before Bronx Underground, and everything just culminated into one great music community, which I mean, which was fantastic.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think there's always people doing things. Like I think music and live music, like there's always local bands, and even though we might have not witnessed it, and I think it also comes in waves all the time too. Like for example, like during that era, I was young, but I was in a band during Bronx Underground era, and there was also the Yonkers Underground, right? And the Yonkers Underground is actually, I posted a clip about it today on my Instagram because I had a conversation with Donald about this. My buddy Donald, I don't know if you know Donald, but we were talking about him and his brother Nelson, and then a few other people ran the Yonkers Underground, and it was kind of they just loved the Bronx Underground so much that they wanted to do a similar thing, but like make it Westchester represented, and it was super cool because that was kind of what introduced me to shows. I had maybe gone to a Bronx Underground show, but like I was introduced because I was 12, 13. I was living in Yonkers. It was like, oh, there's this thing that happens like where I live too. And then I got introduced into this other scene because I was obsessed with Dailies Gone Wrong on MySpace. At the time, like, like I had their song on my MySpace page or whatever. It's like, oh, those are like the guys that are like doing things, and but I didn't. It that seemed almost like unattainable when you're 12. Like even though how kind you kind of just said like I hit
Exactly.
some person up to play my first show and was amazed that they said yes.
Exactly.
It was like this unattainable thing that like oh whoa like I can play shows too. You
It's
know,
crazy.
and the
Crazy,
Yonkers
man.
Underground is kind of really what showed me that like that was a reality. So I love the name the
Yeah,
Underground. It's super cool, man. Just it's very like reminiscent of all that stuff.
definitely. And you know, obviously Chris is from Yonkers, and when we started to connect further, he would tell me about, oh, like there's something similar up in Yonkers, which I had never I never knew. You know, I'm from the Bronx, and I think my first ever show that I went to in Yonkers was at McNabb's,
Hmm.
and I was blown away, dude. I was like, this is incredible. You know, everyone's here, like the place is packed. It was a beautiful thing to see outside of the Bronx. You know, obviously every place has its own scene, but bro, you guys are doing amazing things up there, like
Yeah,
for real.
it's you know it's again it's just kind of like the Bronx though. It's wavered. You know, it's always kind of been this
Yeah,
like thing, and there's bands that have stuck out and been pretty consistent throughout. But even the bands that like I'm not in the same band I was in 2013, 14, 15. And at the time, like there was a good community then too. It was just different than it is now, you know. And I think
yeah,
it's kind of it's like a hopeful thing of like it's cool that you see that like it doesn't stop. It just kind of changes over
mm,
time, you know. Like and there was maybe a few
yeah.
years in there where it was a little less, and now it's a little more. Or, but I do think about this, and I don't know if you what your involvement in this is, but I think about the younger generation. Like
Mhm.
I don't see a ton of younger bands anymore. At least not where we are. And I'm not talking younger as in 21, 20. I'm talking younger as in like where's the 13, 14, 15-year-old kids that are going to keep this thing going as
Dude,
we come up on 30, you know? Like
I've AJ. that's that's something that's been on my mind, you know, the past 2 years, because when things were happening, when things were in its prime, at those years for us, everyone was doing it.
mhm.
Everyone had a garage band. Everyone was practicing, collaborating. But I haven't seen many people like that. I haven't seen many young people doing that, and I don't know if it's so. These days we call it what the Netflix Fortnite era, right? You know, people are streaming, people are doing this and that and going out, and it's just maybe the focus isn't there, or maybe the passion isn't there, or just maybe they don't know that this is happening.
Yeah.
There's so many parameters, you know, that you could really discuss, but I definitely feel that, especially in the Bronx, there's not many people doing things at that age. You know, maybe they discover it late teens, early 20s, but it's there's so much to it. You know, it could even trickle down to arts in schools, you know, art funding in schools,
It no,
because you definitely
yeah, no, I 100% agree with you on that. Um like up here like I work in the public schools in Yonkers. And I always try to like kind of eye out the kids that I think are like the punk kids, like the kids that are playing in
yeah,
bands or whatever. And I like, but there's no music. You know, there's not music in every school. There's not like it's not really a push. And then there's not like when we were younger, like the when you put on the radio, which isn't even really a thing anymore in reality. Like the radio is not really even a thing anymore. But when you put on the radio, you heard all the cool pop songs and you heard all that, but you also heard Green Day and Blink 182 and My Chemical Romance and like Fallout Boy and these things that were like on what is mainstream radio, but the reality is there is no mainstream radio anymore.
no,
And even if there is, it's not focused on that. Like whatever little left is, it's not focused on that. So I think that it's just it's in a weird time. Like playing in a band and
yeah,
being you know a musician is in a little bit of like a weird space, especially where we are. I think in New York.
yeah, absolutely. There's been this flux of so I think one of the things is that rock itself, or let's say rock alternative punk, there was a time, late '90s, early 2000s, that was the forefront. Like that was the music you would listen to. That's where you would hang out with, skate down, you know, skate down the block with. There's not much of a push or force for it today, especially like you said, radio and mainstream. Everything's kind of switching gears a little bit.
Yeah.
The way we consume music is different. Everything is changing, and it's just people are trying to find their way through that flux.
Yeah.
It's so tricky.
I think too, and it's cool. Like the technology advances in music it's really cool. Like there's a lot of cool stuff, but it's it's almost too easy to to make music and put it out, and that sounds almost gatekeepy, I guess. But I'm not trying to sound gatekeepy. I'm just saying that like when I wanted to learn music, like it was like cool. Like the idea was you get a guitar, you learn how to play the guitar, and same with you, I'm sure. You learn how to play the guitar. If you want to like figure out how to record it, like that's a whole another thing. Like my computer was slow as hell. Like where the reality is now, like you don't need a guitar or anything fancy. Like you got GarageBand or Reaper on your computer for free, and then like there's instruments built into those programs, and then I could take it and I can put it on Spotify where everyone can hear it.
Yeah.
Like it's like so it's amazing how accessible it is, but I think that it is kind of it has like almost taken away some of the like the learning an instrument and like being interested in that aspect of it. And maybe I'm wrong, but it's just kind of how how I've kind of viewed it.
Well, I think you can almost view it as there's so much more music, like you said. There's so much more. You could even say competition, and there's so many more artists out there that could just do it from their bed or from their basement or wherever.
Yeah, which is amazing in itself.
Which is
it makes it
amazing.
way more accessible. Way more accessible.
Absolutely. And that also switches on maybe on a different level, above the independent level. That kind of switches the game of the industry as well. Because if you could produce, make, master your own records, whether yourself or in a group, the higher tiers of the industry of record labels and all that stuff kind of lose their power a little bit, or their buying power, and reinforces the independent scene. But again, that creates more music, that creates more musicians, more outlets. Funny enough, so after Pace, I enrolled into the Institute of Audio Research because I'm like, okay, let me fine tune my education. I learned business accounting for royalties, management, all this stuff, marketing, and eventually I graduated. They hired me to run admissions for the business program.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my admissions tactics was like, listen, here you'll learn how to create music and produce, and mix and master from your bedroom.
Yeah.
We'll give you the tools, X, Y, and Z. But that was the change in the market. And that was the change in the way people rose out of their garages to their home studios, which is a beautiful thing. But again, it creates this whole different market.
Yeah, it's different. It's a different time. It's I definitely think about it in terms of like I always think about how do I get like my music or the things that I'm doing to a younger audience, and especially the things I do on a local level, because I'm like I just want to get it to them so that it continues. You know what I'm saying? Like so that if there's someone to like pick up the torch and go like, "Oh, cool. This is next," because it's amazing. We have a great group of people right now, between you guys, between all the people in Westchester that host shows regularly, but it's all older people. It's all people that are in our 20s and our 30s, and like it'd be amazing if like there was some kids that started throwing shows at some hall in Yonkers and they were all like 14. I'd be like, yo, that's so cool. Like, that's amazing. I'm going to show up and I'm going to make sure to promote the hell out of that and help them with that. Like, because that's what we need to like keep going. Like, who keeps this thing rolling when, the reality is when you get older, like it gets harder. It gets harder to do.
Yeah. I totally feel that. I'm 27. I'll be 28 in a few months, and I'm like, okay, I can't. I wouldn't feel right trying to reach out to 13, 14-year-olds. Like come to the shows.
Right.
But having that connection, having like again younger people trying to throw shows is tricky because especially in the Bronx, there's no major venues, in this borough. There's no music halls. We have spaces.
Same in same in Westchester in
yeah,
general.
It's tricky.
Yeah.
I feel like you understand the plight trying to have shows in our hometowns as opposed to people going to Manhattan or Brooklyn and like where venues are rampant. I've always felt we need a solid space, and we have to have those people, those young people understand this is important. This is local culture. This is local community.
Yeah.
We need this within our hometowns. It's tricky, man.
It's
It's
super tricky. It's even trickier here because we don't have any all ages space anymore. Like when I was throwing shows between in college, like when I was doing shows in college, I was renting out whatever hall I could get, which was cool. Like I wasn't doing shows at Barney McNabb's or any, and I love these places, but they're all 21 plus. That's setting a limit that the people that come to the show have to be at least 21 years old.
okay.
Um, but all those places I would throw shows after one or two, they were like, nah, never again. Like they didn't want anything to do with it. So you're right. I think space is like the biggest thing. Having like even a space that becomes the space that kids know about and like can go to and like it becomes theirs. So like FLC was for our generation in 2005, 6, 7, which is amazing that you guys are continuing that. But yeah,
What other spaces have you guys had in Yonkers? Do you guys go from space to space, or like how does that work for you guys?
So when I was throwing shows in, I would throw shows in high school even, but we would just do it wherever. Like in my high school, we would like be like, oh yeah, it's a fundraiser, just so we could get the high school or arena to do a show in, and we would donate whatever $30 we made or whatever. We just wanted to play a show. Like that was really it. But then past that, I got out of college. I went into college, and we would do shows at like. I did one. I did a couple at this place called the Colts Club, which was cool. It was a boys and girls club, but the neighbors hated it. It was all next to houses. Like it was like a place next to people's houses. So they hated it. They hated it. Also, we were putting way too many people in the room. It was like this tiny room, and we did a show where like I had modern baseball play, and a couple bands, and it was like cool. It was awesome, but it was just like 150 people shoved into a room that should be like maybe 30 people should be in. So that, and then we had a friend who did basement shows for a minute in Yonkers at the time, like around the same time, and then did shows at this place called the Home Field House, which was a really cool space. But the last time I did a show there, they said too many people. Again, it was like a space. They're like, oh, there's too many people there. Like we're not interested in having you do that again. So I guess like it kind of just ended up flipping and turning into like, well, like got out of college and it was just like, well, there's bars and we're old enough to do that now.
Yeah.
When you're 19, 20, 18, 19, 20 trying to figure out how to play shows, you don't have the option of playing.
Exactly.
I didn't have that option, right? Like it was like if I want to throw shows, I have to do it somewhere where I can actually go into.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's so tricky, man.
It is. I would love to figure that out, though. That would be an amazing thing. All right, cool. So all right. So Fox and King starts. You're 18. You go through. So now it's so you've been doing this for like 10 years almost now.
Yeah, come next year. It'll be come next year. I want to say around February. It'll be 10 years.
That's amazing.
Which is insane.
Yeah, that's amazing because it's just like most people most people give up by now, and I guess all right. So a question for you would be, and I don't say give up by now, and I think people like look at it as some like glamorous thing when like if you're not doing it because you really like love doing it, then you're not gonna make it 10 years. Like is the reality. Like it's not gonna be a 10-year endeavor. But so I guess did you or still do you? Is it like has it ever been an aspiration for that to be like a career goal, or it's just the thing you like to do because you like to do it?
I think from the start, and even before TFAC, I kind of had this idea where I want to play in a band. I want to be on stage. I want to be part of this world, right? And then I did that for a little bit, and then I just kind of fell in love with the business side of it. Like I want to, because I wasn't the best performer. um, and I fell in love with the business side. I'm like, okay, I love creating spaces and creating these events where people all come together, they have fun, they dance, they sing along, they're connecting with each other. That's what I want to do for the rest of my life. I want to create those spaces, whether it's a show down the block, whether it's, a festival, whether it's a stadium, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It's something I truly love and enjoy. And there were plenty times, over almost 10 years, plenty of times I was like, listen, I can't do this anymore. It's too much. It's too difficult. I'm not getting the results I want, but I remembered like this is something I love. This is a passion, and I just kind of kept it going, And every year, we take 5 steps further. Whether it's working with other collaborators, whether it's getting opportunities to work with CMJ, Warp Tour, all these different opportunities that we've had. It goes further every year,
Yeah.
and that gives me hope, and that's more opportunities I could give to other people, which is important to me.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that's amazing. I think that anyone that goes into music that thinks that like you could have the idea that like you're like, all right, it would be really cool to make this like a career, right? Like that would be cool to have a music career, but you can never go into it with that as the sole driver of why you're doing it, because because it's the reality of it is it's hard no matter what aspect of music you're in. If you're in a band, a solo artist, if you're a booking agent, if you're a concert promoter, whatever, I don't care. Like, it doesn't matter. Any aspect of the music industry is difficult, right?
Absolutely.
So unless you like love it, like it gets hard, and you see people kind of like say they want to do something, and it's always, I'm sure it comes out of like a good place, but like if you're starting something with like, yep, I'm gonna make my money from doing this, it's like, bro, you are in the wrong place. Like
that is not the place to be.
Yeah. Like that is just not it, dude. Like I still to this day have never, I don't really I'm just not like a money person, I guess. Like I definitely, as I've grown older, I've learned that like, oh shoot, like I really kind of need money to survive, and it would be cool if I could figure out how to make the thing I love make me money. But I just never like, I went in a money first approach on anything I've ever done, pretty much ever, which has led me to lose a lot of money. but even to this day, like people will be like, I remember I had a really successful show last year, and it was a question of like, it was really successful, and you always think now, like for me now, I always think like, well, I want to keep growing this, and to grow something, if you have a little bit of money, it's easier, right? Because you can now put the money back into the thing.
Invest.
Right. I didn't used to do that. I never did that. Like, I would just spend all the money, and like we would make money at a show, and I'd be like, all right, here's all the money to all the bands, and like I'm like, I was overly generous, which is, it's, I don't regret it at all, but I took a little money, and there was like a question. I was like, whoa, there should never be a question of like, I've lost so much to like I'm sure you could agree over 10 years. It's like, I've definitely spent infinitely more money on like doing the thing that I'm doing than I've ever made back,
It's such a funny way to think about it, because from an outsider's point of view, you would say, okay, you've been doing this for 10 years, you're rolling deep, you got, which is not the case, it's I feel like what we're doing is creating, again, we're creating a platform and a space, regardless of how we're doing it, whether as an artist or as a promoter or a venue owner. We're creating opportunities and spaces for people who love music. Of course, it would be great if things were generating and I could quit my day job. That would be great. I love that. But in time, everything I feel like it is an investment to the next step, to the next step, to the next step, until you hit that point, or if you don't, that's fine. With me, I don't mind having a day job. I do my thing, and then I focus right after work, TFAC, underground, I'm doing my thing. I'm working with musicians. I'm working with other places, other brands. But eventually, it's all investment into the brand, into the community. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's again, it goes back to like just love. If you love doing it because for the genuine reason of like you just love the idea of the community and you love the idea of like growing a community, then the other stuff, if it comes, cool. If it doesn't, I still love doing the thing. You know what I'm saying? Like at the end of the day, like I still, when I stop loving this, I'll stop doing it. I think I've said that exact thing on this podcast before, and it was about something unrelated. But like, if I like at the moment I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do this anymore, is the moment I'll be like, okay, well now it's time to figure something else out, right?
That's honestly, I feel like that's the most perfect way you could put it.
Yeah, because you just
There it is.
you
Yeah.
can't you can't. It's never like nobody is making money from local music. Nobody.
Right.
Like to think that like any like no one is doing it's you know you
It's also, if you fall out of love with what you're doing, then you're not going to do a good job. You're going to dread it.
yeah
Things are going to go wrong. That's when you know, like, okay, this chapter is over. Let's start something else.
yeah.
You know.
But that then the loving it leads to 10 years of doing it, which is amazing for you and the Fox and King. I mean that's super awesome. You know, like it's cool seeing because there are people that you know, and I've come across it a lot. I've toured the whole country. There are people that come and they try to do things that are like shady within music to make money off of it. And when you see that people are just like doing it to make money off of it, it's kind of like, well, I don't know that I really want to be involved in that because that's not like real DIY culture to me. That's not like the people that are telling you you have to sell X amount of tickets and if you don't, you have to pay me the balance and you have to sign this thing. Like that's not real DIY culture to me. You know?
And I've had partners. I've had major brand partners. I don't want to go into details, but there was a situation that I had to walk away from because I didn't appreciate their kind of business. Ooh, my phone fell. I didn't appreciate their kind of the way they did business with live music, and it was just tickets were sold and the artist could just say, "Oh, I paid for all the tickets," and it's a dead room.
Yeah.
It's a venue. It's empty, which eventually led to the venue being closed. They shut down everything. They closed it down. We're not making any money. We're not making anything. And if they're fine with that, that's all well and good. But I won't have any part of that. That's not an event.
That's it's
No.
yeah, it's a money first approach, which never in anything you do, it doesn't even matter if it's music. If you do anything that's like a passion, like it has to be an actual passion and not a money first approach because doing that is like you're going into this being like, how do I make money from doing this? Instead of being like, I really want to do this thing because I love doing this thing, and it's a very different way of doing it. And it's, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, there's promoters that are say, hey, they'll approach you and they'll say, well, I have this like big guarantee to meet. Do you think you could bring this many people out to the show? Right. That's a completely different story.
Right.
Like that's a different thing. But there's people that are booking local shows or Battle of the Bands or something, and they're like, yep, you got to sell 30 tickets. It's like, well, all the people that come for that band are just going to leave immediately after that band plays. Yeah. And then this band's going to go on, and all those people are going to come and then leave. Like, no one's going to be there for an event. Like, that's not a community. Yeah. That's like trying to make money off local artists.
It's funny. I at some point, I think it was 2014 or 2015, I was working as a stage manager for South by Southwest. And some of the events, they were like, yeah, $200 slots, $300 slots to artists for like a 5-10 minute show. And I'm like, what? And these are local, we're in Austin, it's you have your local and then you have your major, South by Southwest. But I'm like, I was baffled.
They're exploiting the situation.
People are paying it.
Of course. Yeah, they're exploiting the situation. They're exploiting mostly younger artists that don't understand that that's not how it should go down. I actually, a couple months ago, I had a young rapper play his first show. And he played he opened the show that I put together. And I handed him money at the end of the night. And when I handed him the money, I was like, yo, just so you know, this will not always happen. I was like, I don't want you to be confused when you play another show and this doesn't happen for you.
Yeah.
This show did super well. And he did his job in bringing people out. And I always wanted to be like, yo, here's a couple bucks. But I was like, this is not normal. Like, most people would be like, oh, yeah, you got to play, right? But yeah, I think it's important that we, to teach young kids that, money first approach on anything is just, it's not, exactly. It's not real DIY culture, at least not to me.
I agree, for sure.
Cool. So, Actually, you want to talk about your day job real quick?
Yeah. So for the past 2.5 years, I've been working for Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in Midtown. Amazing place. One of the number, I think it's number one, if not number two, cancer research center in the world.
Mm.
Um, Happy, very happy to work for them. And I work in clinical cancer research. So technically, I'm the clinical research coordinator for all of pathology. And it's it sounds like complex, but I handle all of the doctor's protocols, research. If two hospitals want to work with us, I process the legalities and the contracts, and it's it's fun. I'm good at it. I like where I work and who I work with. But I didn't think I'd stay there that long, but I come to enjoy the people I work with. So
Cool.
it's a good job. Yeah.
That's awesome. And was there something that like specifically made you want to go into that kind of work, or did you just like find the job opportunity, or?
So it's funny. When I was working for IAR, I was still in admissions, and at some point, unfortunately, the school was bleeding for the past 10, 15 years. And when I started was the year that it crumbled. So unfortunately, it did shut down, and I was lucky enough to have opportunity to MSK and it ran with it. I was able to move up twice in the first year and a half, and just I'm going forward ever since.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
That's awesome, dude. Yeah, I mean, it's been like a just cancer research in general has been a big thing in my family. My mom, she's run the Yonkers Relay for Life event through American Cancer Society for years. So it's like a, and then we also my uncle runs St. Baldrick's, which is like the shave your head for pediatric cancer. So it's like definitely a big thing within my family. So it's cool to hear that you're doing that, and
Yeah,
I'm sure it's like a very I'm sure it's like a job that you can come home from and be like, wow, I'm really doing something to like help other people, which is
exactly. And that's part of why I love it. Because everything I do, is part of the research for any kind of cancer cures or any kind of new treatments. And for me, it's like, okay, this is something worth doing, and I enjoy it.
that's awesome. That's cool, man. I mean, yeah, definitely. It seems like it fits your personality, to do something for others. That's awesome. Cool. So I know we kind of like halfway talked about this right before we hopped on, but 2020, weird year, especially if you're at all in music. But I mean, if you're in anything, but definitely music, especially now where I don't know if you just saw, but I'm sure you did. Cuomo said that there's no ticketed music events like allowed now, right? Like music has to be a thing that if it's happening at a place, it's not the event. It is,
Mm-hmm.
which essentially just is the end of the thing that we do.
It's definitely one of the biggest blows we've had this year for the industry. Um, I truly don't know where we're going to be in the next 6 months, next 12 months. There are already venues closing permanently here in New York and across the country.
Like where? Do you know anything specifically?
There are a few
Curious.
spots in Austin, and then I want to say California as well.
Okay, yeah,
That are,
I saw a study that's like 90% of independent music programs,
yeah,
I mean, sorry, venues could be completely shut down depending on how long this lasts. But I also think bands, there's going to be tons of bands that do not make it through this and will never tour again. Because they have to, depending on how long this goes. You can't take 2 years off of work. If like being in the band was your job, you can't take 2 years off of that. Like there's no way. Yeah.
and
So,
what's unfortunate, I came across I the organization NEVA, that's the National Venue Association.
mm-hmm.
They put out this flow chart of how everything's affecting everything else, and you have the local sectors, the local independent sectors, the major sectors, the major venues. Once things start dropping, it's a domino effect. It's a domino effect. It's happening now, And once you lose the major venues, you lose the music communities. When you lose that, you lose the local scenes. It's it's such a hit, especially with the latest mandate from Governor Cuomo. And I have friends, Sounds and Sirens. They have their events at the Ice House. That's affecting them directly. They're another prominent promoter, in the Bronx. And it's just, I really there needs to be something done federally to help and jumpstart the music industry, the music communities
Yeah.
nationwide.
100%. Like it's really interesting to me. And honestly, you can go to the political aspect of it and why everything is money driven, but like it's really interesting to me that they are telling music venues that you cannot do your thing, but there is no like aid for it. But then, like, but church can happen. And I'm like, but what? It's a virus. What is the difference between if a bunch of people are standing in a church wearing masks or if a bunch of people are like, and I will say that I don't think that music events should happen right now. I'll put that out. Like, I don't think that, but I don't think we should also have to pick it. We can pick and choose what events happen and what don't. And, and it's clearly money driven, but like, you're right that federally, like, the music industry and the entertainment industry in general is just such a massive part of our culture as the world globally, but like definitely in our country, and like to not help try to bail it out when it's really being affected is like insane to me.
One would almost say it's borderline criminal. And just to bridge off that, with Department of Education, schools are reopening. You're going to have children in close quarters. You're going to have, and I don't know why. I personally think everything should be, via Zoom and online remotely. But if you're going to have
that's what they're doing in Yonkers.
It's like you can have a venue open. You can have something if you're going to have that. It's the picking and choosing.
Yeah,
I don't understand.
I don't either. Like, I just don't. The reality of me like says like it is that certain people are paying for certain things to happen, and that is conspiracy maybe, but I think it's probably the reality is that like if you have the money to say like, hey, you really should let us be open, like it'll be open. But yeah, man, it's just it's really it sucks. It sucks to also just not like this is so out of our control. Like it sucks for something like that affects our lives so much to be so out of our control. This is a virus. We don't know when the virus is gonna not be a thing anymore. Like we have no clue. Like this could go 5 more years for all we know. Like so it sucks. But I guess it is definitely going to be a shift to see. It's going to be a shift and a very unfortunate shift in the music industry to see like how people pull through this. Who pulls through it and how they end up doing it, because like that's what it's come down to, like I saw Metallica's doing a tour.
Oh really?
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
So they're doing a live stream tour where essentially you pay I think it's like $120 or something for your car. And the car pulls up and you watch the show on a big screen, and they're staying in San Francisco. But they're playing a live show every day. Like the show is different every time. They're playing live in San Francisco in a studio, and they're sending a crew around the country, which is like a really cool thing, but also only a thing a band like Metallica can do because they have the money to do something like that.
That's a great idea, but again, like that's Metallica. You're gonna show up for that,
Yeah, like a band that plays Webster Hall and can sell it out, like is essentially a bigger band, but not a band that can do that.
Exactly.
They can't hire a crew and pay for all the gear rental and like do something. That's just it's not feasible. So every band that's kind of in that, like the really big bands will make it through, and the local bands will make it through because local people because we don't rely on this to live.
Right.
Like I don't rely on these things to survive. Right. It's I still have a job, but the people that are in that middle tier level of like either you run a small music venue, or you're a music manager or an agent, or or you're in like a medium sized band. Like those people are not going to make it through this very unfortunately, or they're going to figure out some really cool thing to do that's going to help them get through this.
Yeah, so I know we very briefly discussed this when COVID kind of like started. I know you mentioned like you had a whole tour planned. You're ready to go out. Like what have you guys been doing? To keep yourselves, to keep the music going. I know you've been doing like live streams and stuff like that.
Yeah, for us it's been Twitch. We ended up coming like as we were driving home. from that tour, we were in Arkansas, so we had literally 25 hours to drive. So it took like 2 days. Um, yeah, so like we had a lot of time to talk in that 25 hours, and it was like, yo, we were supposed to be gone for 2.5 more weeks, right? Like we had, and at this point, this is when things like with COVID were hitting and no one knew anything. So we were just trying to get home really quick, but also we didn't know that I didn't know I was going to be out of work for months. I had no idea at this point. I didn't know they were going to close schools down for the rest of the year. Like that was like that was an absurd thought in March.
Think about that.
Yeah, but like at the time we were just like, all right, well, I wasn't planning on working for the next 2 weeks. So when we get back, let's figure out what we can do next. Like we're both of us in Shakeout are kind of like we're very like, all right, what's next thing? Like it's like we could be really bummed about this, or we can figure out what's next, you know? Because this is completely out of our control. And also at the time, we thought we might even be able to still do the end of the tour. Like we were that naive about it. We didn't know. We were like, hey, maybe we can go home and then go back out and finish the East Coast dates that we were supposed to do, you know? But
yeah,
obviously that didn't happen. But yeah, we've been doing live streams, and we kind of built a setup. But we had the very awesome thing of living together, which most bands are not doing. Most bands can't even have band practice because they don't want to be in close quarters with each other, you know? Yeah. So we have the nice luxury of living together and being only 2 people, you know? And so that reality it's nice for us. But then again, like I said, Shakeout's not paying my bills.
Right.
You know? So like, it's for the people that need to tour or need a band on the road, whether they're working for that band or whatever, that's what they need to happen to survive. That's a different story. Like you know, like that, it's not paying my bills. So I've been staying busy with it. And then I started, you know, doing stuff like this with the podcast and printed a bunch of t-shirts for local bands right in the beginning of the quarantine.
That's dope, by the way. I love that you do that because it's a direct support to spreading the brands of the bands and all that stuff. I think that's excellent.
Yeah. It was fun, man. It was fun. It was cool to just be like, it was a lot of work. I honestly, doing that project, I'll never do it again like I did it. Because it was just way too much work. Because I'm screen printing. I don't have like a DTG machine, and like, I don't know if you know the difference, but like a DTG machine is essentially you could print off 1-off t-shirts, where screen printing is made for like bigger bundles of printing, right? Like because there's a lot of like prep work for it. So I was doing a lot of prep work and then printing 2 shirts for a band. And like, so you'd be like, wow, I just spent 5 hours in prep work to print 2 t-shirts for this band. So I learned that like, it was fun. It was a cool learning experience regardless. I don't regret it. And I was just stoked that 65 t-shirts of the local bands got out and people are wearing them now. Like that was cool in itself to me. I'm like, yo, even though this took me like like, I had set this timeline to be like, yeah, guys, I'm going to get it out by this date. And it did not happen. Because as I was doing it, I was like, I need way more time than this. But what have you guys been doing? I know we did one of your live streams, so I know you're doing that for a minute.
So it was a little, as you can imagine, it was a little heartbreaking because we had created this space called the Foxhole, which was literally my entire basement. You know, we had a neon sign.
That's awesome.
We had a couple bands there. Eat Defeat from the UK came through. It was like their last leg on the tour, the first US tour. We'd love to play in the Bronx, and we just kind of put it together and planned multiple shows, you know, for the next few months. Obviously, all that canceled.
Funny enough, not to interrupt you, but my friend Kaylee from Feed the Scene in Baltimore was at your show in your basement.
Get out of here.
Yeah, she told me. She was like, yeah, I went to this place, the Foxhole, and I met the people there. I was like, yeah, that's awesome. But yeah, she drove up from Baltimore. Maybe it was for that UK band. It was for like one of her friends' band that wasn't playing in the Baltimore area. She drove to the Bronx to go see, and it was your show. Yeah,
I love that's why I do it. That right there, it's like, yo, that's dope. Yeah,
she's part of Feed the Scene, who does awesome shows in Baltimore. They're like a very cool.
Oh, hell
and
yeah.
They house bands, and then they also they host shows. But anyway, sorry, not to cut you off. You had to cancel a bunch of shows.
Yeah, you know, it sucked. You know, we had The Language, which is a favorite band of mine, was gonna have their album release, so it was a whole thing.
Oh, Rob.
Yeah, it was. So we had to figure out, okay, we can't do shows here. We can't do shows across the city, and we can't have FLC. What do we do? And you know, we really just thought about it and said, okay, what can TFAC do outside of live music, live shows? So we started the night sessions, which is basically was artist takeovers. You know, um, twice a week we have artists log on to our IG, perform, talk, do whatever you want to do. Our platform is your platform. And we did, I want to say around 27 artists.
It's a lot.
And yeah, I honestly, I didn't foresee the amount of attention and support that we're going to have for it. I figured, oh, it's just another marketing scheme, but people loved it, you know, and kept it going. We got a lot of attention from BronxNet about it, so we're working with them on a certain project, which we've been working with Conversing with Oceans on.
That's awesome.
Great dude. You know Alex.
Shout out
Awesome.
Alex. I love
Shout out
Alex.
Alex. Everything, honestly, everything that Alex has done for the scene, and you know, all the charities that he's worked and supported, such a great dude.
Yeah,
You know,
he's a great guy.
props to him.
Always good vibes. I only met him in person one
Mhm.
one time, I think, but I've talked to him on the internet a lot of times. And I met him at FLC. That's what it was, actually. It was at FLC. And I played a show years ago with A Moment's Worth. Like, years ago. Years ago. But, anyway, sorry. Shout out Alex.
No.
Alex is a great dude.
For sure. So we're doing that, and we're about to release our next round of merch. I want to say late September. So we got some new stuff coming out there, and really just focusing on other services and projects that we could handle and work on without having to do live music, live events. And that's something, you know, I think we briefly mentioned before, is that we're at a time where brands have to be innovative. If they have the ability to, if they have the ability to say, okay, I can't do this, but I'll do X, Y, and Z. What else can you do? What else can you offer? How else can you extend yourself to keep the brand and business going? You know, and that's really what our focus is right now.
Yeah, so you got to go into it's and again, I think we can say that we're fortunate in the sense that we can do that, and we don't have to panic about it. You know, like, because we don't, like, you still have your day job. You know, like, this isn't, like, it's not like, oh, my God, what am I going to do? It's like, well, okay, I got to figure out what I can do now.
Yeah.
But, like, if I'm not going to panic because this was never paying the bills anyway. Like, I don't have to, like, just, like, what's next? But that's cool, man. That's the attitude of someone that keeps something going for 10 years, you know? What's next? What do I have to do next? Oh, global pandemic, virus? Okay. Well, how do I keep this going now?
Yeah, but you know, we're lucky. We're lucky to have this opportunity.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I'm glad to see you guys. You keep busy all the time, and it's really cool. And I love anyone that's doing shit for the right reasons, man. It's really awesome. Be yourself. Do it yourself.
You heard.
All right, cool. Is there anything you want to plug? Maybe plug your social. I'll put the socials in the
Yeah. You can find Boxing King on IG and on Facebook. The Boxing King _Inc. on IG, and then the Boxing King on Facebook. You know, check us out. Let us know what you think, and then we can connect if you want to connect with me directly. IG at Fernando MGT. Let's chat, let's talk, let's connect, let's work.
Yeah, man. Yeah, you guys are killing it. I really appreciate you doing this and being on, especially for the 24-hour extravaganza where I will be ridiculously tired. I'm actually glad. Like I said, I usually do these live, but I'm glad we got to do this ahead of time. So now, like, this hour will be hitting press play that day. All right, man. Well, thank you again for doing it. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, dude.
Appreciate it.